Hello and welcome to another episode of Demystifying Hindu Philosophy, Mythology, and Rituals. In today's talk, we'll continue to explore the deeper meaning behind the various avatars or incarnations of Lord Vishnu. In the previous episode, we talked about the significance of the Varaha Avatara, and if you have not watched that video, I urge you to check that one out. It will help you to understand what we are going to discuss right now better and put it into perspective. So, to recall, the sages had banished the gatekeepers of Vishnu, Jaya Vijay, to be born as asuras in three lifetimes, as a pair of brothers in three lifetimes. In the first lifetime, they were born as Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. And Hiranyaksha was destroyed by the Varaha Avatara, and Hiranyakashipu was destroyed by the Narasimha Avatara, which we are going to discuss right now. So Hiranyakashipu had gone and done severe penance and austerities for 1,000 years because he wanted to be the most powerful ruler of the three worlds being the Bhuloka, the Bhuvarloka, and the Swargaloka, which is our anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later. So after 1,000 years of severe penance, austerity, and meditation, Lord Brahma appeared before him and offered him a boon, and Hiranyakashipu wanted the boon of immortality. Brahma said, I cannot give you that boon because whoever is born has to die. So ask for something else. So Hiranyaksha asked for a very stringent conditions under which he can be killed. He laid down the conditions that he will not be killed either by humans or by either by a man or by animals. He won't be killed either on the ground or in the air. He won't be killed in the night or daytime. He won't be killed inside a building or outside in a battlefield or outside. And he won't be killed by any weapons. So he thought he had covered all the conditions that are normally can destroy or kill a person. And Brahma granted him this boon. So he came back while he was gone. His pregnant wife was taken care of by sage Narada, who is a great devotee of Lord Narayana. So even in his gestation, their son Prahalad, Hiranyakashipu and son is Prahalad. From his womb, all he heard was the glories of the Lord Narayana, which is the pure supreme consciousness. So he was born into this world with a deep, deep devotion and love for Lord Narayana. So when Hiranyakashipu comes back to his kingdom and gets his wife and child back, he establishes a powerful kingdom, and there was nobody in the three worlds that could challenge him. So he became arrogant and very strong and powerful. But his greatest grief was that his son refused to accept him as the sovereign lord of the three worlds, because Prahalad, his son, believed that Lord Vishnu was, or the supreme pure, supreme consciousness was the supreme lord of the universe. So Hiranyakashipu gave his son an ultimatum to accept him as the sovereign lord, or that he would die, that he has to choose death. And to which Prahalad said, so be it. So Hiranyakashipu ordered his kingsmen to kill Prahalada, and they tried through several means, giving him poison and throwing him into a dungeon with snakes and having wild elephants trample him. Nothing worked. So Hiranyakashipu was getting tired. So he called, his ultimate resort was to call his sister, whose name is Holika, and who had been given a special boon from Brahma. She herself had done a lot of penance and austerities, and the boon was that she can enter the fire and sit in a fire and not get burnt. So Hiranyakashipu asked her to take Prahalad on her lap and enter a fire, a burning fire, a pyre of fire, and hoping that, knowing that she won't be destroyed, but Prahalad will be burnt. Prahlad had no qualms. There was no anxiety because he had this deep faith and devotion to that Lord Vishnu will protect him. So as soon as Holika took Prahlad on her lap and then the people lit the fire, something strange happened. Holika herself was burned to ashes, but Prahlad was untouched. And Hiranyakashipu was astounded. But he had reached the last stage of his patience, and he gave one final ultimatum to Prahlad and said, either you accept me as the Supreme Lord of the three worlds, or I have to kill you myself. Prahlad said, no, you cannot. I know you cannot kill me because I will be protected by my Lord Vishnu. So Hiranyakashipu said, where is your Lord? How do you have so much faith in him? How do you know he'll protect you? And so Prahlad said, well, he's everywhere. And Hiranyakashipu just pointed to the big pillar in his central assembly hall and said, is he, derisively, sarcastically, saying, is he in this pillar also? And Prahlad said, yes, he's everywhere, so he is in this pillar. So Hiranyakashipu, in his anger, rage, and fury, took his mace and he struck the main pillar of his assembly hall. And as soon as he struck the pillar, it broke, and from there emerged this most ferocious being, because nobody could tell what it was. The face was that of a lion, and the torso was a human, and there were flames of fire coming out of this creature. And this creature known as Narasimha, Nara meaning human, Simha meaning lion, half man, picked up Hiranyakashipu and dragged him to the entrance of the palace. At the entrance, in the portico, where it was in the evening time, he put Hiranyakashipu on his lap and said, I'm going to destroy you right now without violating any of the conditions of Brahma's boon, because I am neither a man nor an animal, and it's evening, so it is neither morning nor night. And you are lying on my lap, and you're neither on the ground nor in the air, and I'm not going to. We are not inside your palace. We're not outside. And I'm not going to use any weapon. I'm going to kill you with my bare nails. And saying which, he killed Hiranyakashipu. But he was so furious, and he was so angry, and it's called, very ferocious avatar. So everybody, including Brahma and all the other people, were scared to approach him, but they asked Prahlada to approach him, and Prahlada's deep faith and adoration of Vishnu brought him down to his normal amicable energy and personality, and he made Prahlad the king of his kingdom. Now let's just step back a little bit and try to decode some of these imagery and clues that have been given for our spiritual journey. Now we have to first of all start from the three gunas that all of us, everything has three qualities: the tamasic qualities, the rajasic qualities, and the sattvic qualities. The tamasic qualities is indolence, laziness, and inertia, just wanting to enjoy life and not having the ability to work towards raising our consciousness and growing emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. And that was represented by Hiranyakashipu when he took the earth and he sunk it into the ocean. It symbolically meant taking the place where we can work on our activities, on our past karmas and past karmic imprints, past impressions, vasanas as it is called, tendencies, and sink it into our subconscious and not do anything. So to combat that, we need the Varaha Avatara, which is to dive deep into our subconscious and bring up all these tendencies and negative qualities that we need to work on. Then once we are able to do that, we will come up with the central problem or obstacle between in our path of spirituality, which is a rajasic element, and that is represented by Hiranyakashipu. Now let's understand one thing: ego is not bad in and of itself. In fact, you need ego to rise out of that tamasic state where you don't want to do anything, just enjoy life and live in a pre-programmed instinctual life. So that is signified by Hiranyakashipu doing 1,000 years of penance and austerities. We need to do that to be able to rise from this indolence, laziness, inertia, wanting to do something but not having the energy or the ability to actually pursue that. And then so the ego is necessary to destroy our tamasic qualities, the laziness. But ego is a very subtle thing, and this is represented or symbolized by the conditions. How ego can veil itself. It's very difficult to grapple with the ego and to kill the ego, because you can't, the conditions that it can't be morning, can't be night, can't be inside, can't be outside, can't be in the air, can't be on the ground, can't do it with weapons. What does that say? It is a slimy, slippery thing to actually come in contact with the ego that is stopping you from your or becoming an obstacle in your spiritual growth is very difficult to kill. So that all these conditions were there to symbolize how difficult it is to kill the ego. But and then we are thinking the Holika story, because Holika, the sister of Hiranyakashipu, had herself done severe austerities and penance to get this boon from Brahma, which says that she will not be destroyed by fire. But there was a condition to that boon, that you can use that to protect yourself, but never to destroy somebody else. So this rajasic tendency, this ego, which is not bad, you need ego to rise out of your tamasic, that laziness and indolence, to destroy your own tamasic qualities. But the Brahma or the universe does not give you the right to use your ego to destroy somebody else. And if you choose to do that, unfortunately you will get destroyed. That is what the Holika story is supposed to tell us, that ego is good to rise from your unawareness, unconsciousness, laziness, indolence, but you cannot use your ego to destroy anybody else. Then let's talk about the pillar. Why Narasimha had to come out of a pillar? I mean, he could have just presented himself right in the middle of the central hall. Now when we go deep dive into our subconscious and shift through and go through all our negative limiting tendencies, after taking care of all of our fighting or conquering our sensual pleasures and where we dissipate energy, there is one quality that is very difficult, and that is the ego. And this pillar is supposed to symbolize that, because in a building, there are many walls and pillars, but there is one wall or a pillar that is a weight bearing pillar, they say. Some pillars you can break and nothing will happen to the structure of the building, but the weight bearing pillar, when you break that, the whole structure or the building will collapse. Likewise, you can conquer many of your negative and limiting tendencies, but that will not destroy the ego. The ego is the central edged God out, God being the unity principle, and ego is that which keeps you separate from the unity principle, which is God. To break that, once you break that, the ego, the separateness from the Brahman or the unifying principle, then the path becomes much easier, your spiritual path becomes much easier. So that is the significance of why he had to come out of that pillar in the central hall. And then Prahalad, Prahalad represents our sattvic tendencies. No matter how tiny you are, he was a young boy, he was weaponless, he had nothing to protect himself except his devotion and faith in Vishnu, which is the pure consciousness. So each of us have that. We have the Hiranyaksha within us, which is, we may have desire to grow and in psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, but we get caught up in enjoyment. We really don't want to do much about it, just wish, but we don't want to put any effort into it. And that is represented by the hiranyaksha, the tamasic tendencies. Then once we grow, we do austerities and penance, which means that meditating and also taking actions. When you want to do something, you have to take action towards this. That is represented by the Hiranyakashipu. That is a rajasic tendency. Ego is not bad in and of itself. You need ego to rise beyond your lethargy, your inertia, and your tamasic qualities. To conquer your tamasic qualities, you need rajasic qualities, activities. But the problem with the rajasic quality is that you get caught up in the doership. The ego is so strong, gets so entrenched that you don't want to go transcend beyond that. And I will narrate a small story that will make this how difficult it is to overcome ego and the doership. Enjoyment you can overcome with a little bit of effort. Takes a lot more effort to overcome the doership. I have done this and I am helping people. There was once upon a time there was a sculptor who would sculpt beautiful murtis for temples, and he once delivered a beautiful murti to a village temple, and temple priest was a very accomplished astrologer. He looked at the sculptor's horoscope and was dismayed and said, look, you have only 3 more months to live. And so the sculptor said, but what good is that information? You must tell me how I can do something about it. So the village priest told him that, look, you're such a accomplished sculptor. What you can do is make 2 more statues or murtis just like yourself. So when the Yamadutas, or the god of death, sends his messengers to take the soul away, he's going to get confused and won't know who to take. And you have 3 months, so get to work. So the sculptor built 2 statues, identical, cloned himself in 2 statues. You could not tell the difference. He was such a fine craftsman. And when the Lord of Death's messengers came to take him away, they were truly confused. They didn't know who to take. They cannot take the wrong person. So they went back to the God of Death and said, we didn't know who to bring because there are 3 people looking just the same. So the Lord of Death, Yama, told them that, look, I'll tell you how to identify. And he gave them the formula, and he said, now go back and get. And these messengers come down and they see again this sculptor has 2 of his statues, lifelike statues of him. And this time the Yamadutas go there and they start praising the statue, saying, oh my God, who has done these, crafted these statues, sculpted these statues? They're so beautiful, lifelike. My God, would we ever know who's done this? Who could be that talented artist? And the sculptor could not contain himself. After a little bit, he said, I have done it. And obviously, he gave himself away and he had to go. The moral of the story is ego is such a strong force or tendency within us. Even though we know it's going to kill us, we still cannot stop from taking credit that I have done this. If he had kept quiet, again the Yamadutas would have gone back and he would have still been alive. But no, ego comes in the way. So that is the significance behind that pillar. In a building, everything can go, but the weight-bearing pillar is our ego in our body, which is like the building of our, like a building. The weight-bearing tendency or the quality is ego. And Prahalada is that sattvic quality, because we all have tamasic qualities, rajasic qualities, sattvic qualities that cannot be snuffed out. No matter, he looks small, he looks defenseless, but his faith in the universe, universal principle, unity consciousness, got him through. And that we can also our faith in the goodness, in the in the pure consciousness and the universal principle, which we also call God, the matrix, infinite possibilities, whatever name we give to it, can get us through the worst of trials and tribulations in our life. And so This is, and yes, why a man, Narasimha, why did he take the Narasimha Avatara? Because to break tamasic tendencies are mostly our animalistic, instinctual tendencies, just to eat and, shelter, food, and sex. Food to preserve ourselves, and sex to preserve our species. So we get caught up in the tamasic tendencies. We don't want to rise. So the significance behind the half man, half lion is that we need the power of choice, of intention, of faith to break free from our animalistic, instinctual tendencies. And we can do it, but we need to set aside and commit time to our spiritual growth and awareness. I hope you enjoyed this talk, and stay tuned. I'll be discussing many other stories from our Puranas and Upanishads, and we'll continue this journey together. Thank you, and please stay safe.